our professor actually mentioned your father, Arnold, to us, pointing out how much of a legend he is in the broadcasting industry. So, what is it like being the son of a journalist, having already been exposed to the industry prior to entering it?
Well, I wish my father were alive to hear you refer to him as a legend. He would love that, and he'd be pumping his chest out a little bit. It's actually his 80th birthday today, so it's apropos you bring that up. I was by his gravesite with with one of my kids and my mom, and we were there earlier today and paying our respects, and we miss him a lot. And he was a legend in many respects. He was. He was in this industry a long time. He was a bit of a social crusader, and he was always about freedom of expression and always fought hard for journalistic rights. And, I'm sure if he saw some of what was been shaking down, especially south of the border, he'd be a little bit appalled at how things have turned against the media in some respects. It was great growing up with him in the industry. He was executive producer of CBC News specials for a number of years. So that would be federal elections, the Pope visits, the royal wedding, all the Olympics. Wow. He would be heading up those types of broadcasts, which are big-scale broadcasts. And his specialty was elections. He was very well-versed in the political landscape, not just in Canada, but around the world. Wow. One of the smartest guys I've ever met, a breadth of knowledge in so many different areas. And what was nice is he didn't put any pressure on me or my sisters to follow in his footsteps. I did end up choosing this profession largely because he exposed us to it, and it was really interesting to me. Went into the truck. He'd be back in the truck, as the executive producer. It was very intense during election night, and I get a chance sometimes to see it firsthand, sort of a fly on the wall, and I'd be like, man, this is chaos in here. And meanwhile, he'd be throwing out to Peter Mansbridge and all the other Knowlton Nash and all the anchors at the time, and they were just calm, cool, collected, and it'd be chaos in the truck. And my father would be feeding, we're going to do this next, we're going to do that next. Oh, we got to do, make sure that's right. Oh, why don't we have a font under that guy's name? No one knows who he is. Get a font on that name, be yelling and carrying on. And I just thought it was really exciting, and it was great exposure, and he's taught me a lot. He was my number one critic and my number one fan. So after most shows, he certainly would be like, Dad, what were you doing there? Why'd you do that? And at the same time say, oh, that was really good. You asked a good question there. You followed up nicely there. Or, you talk too quickly, you talk too slowly, or whatever. So feel free to jump in if I'm talking too quickly right now.
No, you're good. You're good. No, this is great. Now, obviously, he must have told you some amazing stories. Tell us one of your favorites.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. So you never met my dad, obviously, but he was small in stature. He's only about 5'8". I know I'm tall, but he was a 5'8" guy, but he was like a bulldog. He was really kind of liking himself to be a bit of a tough guy, like never complained about anything. So this isn't so much a news story as it's a funny story. So he was in the CBC softball league, and it got pretty competitive. So they got to the point where they're having practices. There was all these different, the CBC would play CTV and play the Toronto Star and play all these different media companies. So he was the pitcher. And he pitched in practice to Peter Mansbridge, much acclaimed anchor for so many years. And Mansbridge lined it right off his ankle. And so my father just kept playing. They kept practicing. I'm at home at the time. I'm in high school. And all of a sudden, I'm in my room or whatever, and I hear this, help, help. And I look down, and on the front stoops my father, and he's kind of like lying there on the front stoop to our house. So I run down, I go, what happened? He goes, I don't know. I got hit in the leg with a softball. I go, when did that happen? He goes, I don't know, an hour ago. I said, well, why didn't you leave? He's like, I didn't want to show I was hurt. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction. I'm like, ended up having a broken ankle.
Oh my God.
So we take him to the hospital. He has a broken ankle, and he had a cast for about 8 weeks. And I just thought that epitomizes Arnold Amber to a T. Like, just a dynamic guy and a tough guy, but a smart, a very intellectual, interesting character, and so many good stories behind the scenes about the coverage he had. And he went to war-torn Beirut, and he really had traveled the world to tell great stories. So something I always was hoping to get a chance to do as well.